Luxury brands like Louis Vuitton want their hands in your pockets. All of your pockets. When they face competition, they want to eliminate that competition, and they want to do it by making that competition's product illegal. Many of us own pieces like what I'm talking about today. We purchase them with good intentions, and they're pieces that we enjoy and that brighten our day. And I'm not talking about fakes, so what am I talking about? And how are luxury brands stifling our rights as consumers? Today I'm going to tell you about a few court cases that luxury houses, and specifically Louis Vuitton in this case, have brought against individuals and businesses. And they're going to sound absurd, but they've won. At the end, I will tell you about the one case that I found where the defendant did win. That's a really interesting one, so you'll want to hear that. And for that and everything else, stay tuned. Welcome, I'm Autumn Beckman, and I'm here to help you live your most luxurious life within your budget. I post new videos on Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Saturdays when I'm on schedule, which I have not been lately. There's just a lot going on. So please make sure that you subscribe so you don't miss any of those, and so you don't miss my daily community posts where I share with you the best sales of the day and fabulous handbags that I find. Also, don't miss my website, autumnbeckman.com. I will have that linked in the description box below. And that's where you'll find handbags and small goods that I have for sale, as well as the My Handbag Collection Organizer, which I designed to help you organize and curate a collection of your favorite things. The heart of this planner is the item tracker page, where you can track all the details about your handbags and small goods. And I also just released calendar pages. I have tons of pages for both of these planners, and you can browse through all of that on my website. I'm also going to do a vlog sale very soon, a very big vlog sale. I've been working hard on that. So you're about to see a ton of more handbags and small goods on the website too. Now I'm going to start today's video by telling you about a handful of court cases that Louis Vuitton has brought upon other people, individuals and businesses. And then we'll just talk a little bit about the absurdity of some of this and how Louis Vuitton has ended up winning these cases. I'll give you some of my personal thoughts, and then we'll talk about that one case that the defendant won against Louis Vuitton. And the reason I'm even doing this video is because last week the Fashion Law published an article about one of these cases. Louis Vuitton won a suit that they did against an individual in Korea. These cases primarily have to do with upcycling Louis Vuitton materials and using them to create new pieces for sale. Louis Vuitton is not the only company that has sued people over this. Chanel certainly has. I'm sure others have as well, but today we'll just focus on Louis Vuitton. So in this case, this individual in Korea took Louis Vuitton monogram canvas from bags and other pieces that he'd cut up, and he made them into new products like wallets. I tried to find images of the things that he had created and sold, and I couldn't find any. But in this Fashion Law article, it says that the court found the redesigned products constitute entirely new merchandise and bear Louis Vuitton's trademarks without any disclosures about the products being reformed or reproduced, and the court held that consumers might mistake the products as being made by Louis Vuitton. I did find a similar incident. It didn't turn into a court case, but this one was in America against Quarter Leather. There's a YouTube video about this by the business owner. He did exactly the same thing. He took Louis Vuitton monogram canvas, upcycled it into new pieces such as wallets. Here is an example of one of his wallets, and he had an investigator from Louis Vuitton, yes, they have their own investigators, show up at his house demanding that he sign paperwork and turn over all the materials and all the products that he had to make these wallets and other goods he was selling. Now in this case, Louis Vuitton ended up not suing him. They were able to deal with this on their own outside of the courts. He didn't have to do anything different. He's able to continue doing what he does. I will have his video linked below if you want to go get more details on it. But I wanted to show you this because what he's doing is what I think of as proper upcycling. He's taking a material from a piece that might otherwise end up in a landfill, and he's remaking it into a new product. He's altering it to be something different. And it doesn't look like something that Louis Vuitton would make. If you are someone who's familiar with Louis Vuitton and the things that they make, I think most of us would not mistake this for a Louis Vuitton wallet, especially since he puts his branding on all of his pieces. So ultimately it was determined that he was not doing anything illegal. On the other hand, There was a case with Louis Vuitton suing a company called Sandra Ling Designs. And based on these images I found, what they did was they took the Louis Vuitton monogram canvas and they just cut out the LV part of the logo and then slapped that on brand new third-party merchandise. Now to me, this is not what I think of as proper upcycling. To me, all they're doing here is taking relatively inexpensive, probably not super high quality products and slapping that Louis Vuitton logo on it in a way that looks like that's the branding for the piece. To me, this comes across as them using the Louis Vuitton logo and everything that goes along with that, all the associations that people have with that brand, and using it to sell products that are probably not the best quality. Those products could easily be sold without the logos, but the point here is not really, in my opinion, is not really upcycling. It's benefiting from someone else's logo. Same as if they'd taken one of these pieces and put a picture of Taylor Swift or Mickey Mouse. The people buying those pieces are buying them because they like Taylor Swift or Mickey Mouse, not because of just the product itself necessarily. Similarly, the people buying the pieces with the LV logos are buying it because of the LV logo, not so much because of the product itself. These guys settled with Louis Vuitton out of court, and they ended up paying Louis Vuitton over $600,000. And there's a very similar case happening right now between Louis Vuitton and a company called Keep It Gypsy. They are taking bags, small goods, and a few other products and just slapping a Louis Vuitton logo on it, calling it upcycled, and placing these logos where they look like they are the brand of the item that's being sold. Again, this is doing the same thing that I just said. In my opinion, I think they're trying to brand it as Louis Vuitton, even if everybody familiar with Louis Vuitton knows that that's not a Louis Vuitton piece. They're benefiting from that logo and not from creating their own products. I read an opinion on this case, which says that Louis Vuitton believes this company and selling these products will do, quote, irreparable harm to Louis Vuitton, end quote. Now, I think that's pushing it. I think that's a bit ridiculous. Do any of these companies actually do irreparable harm to Louis Vuitton? No. First of all, they're much smaller companies than the conglomerate of LVMH, which has all the money and power behind it, where they can do whatever they want. But also, most people know the difference between a Louis Vuitton product and any one of these other products that we've just talked about. People are going to recognize that these other products, the upcycled pieces, are not actually made by Louis Vuitton. They are made by some third party that has used the Louis Vuitton canvas. Now, even though I just said I agreed with several of the decisions in these suits, and I'm on Louis Vuitton's side in some of them, I still think, overall, that these suits are a bit absurd and ridiculous, and here's why. Now, I have never studied law, let me get this out of the way, so nothing I say is any kind of legal opinion. It's just my personal opinion and possibly my erroneous interpretation of some of the things that I've read. But in the United States, we have something called the first sale doctrine. And essentially what that means is once you buy something, you own it and you can do whatever you want with it, including reselling it or upcycling it without the permission of the company who manufactured it or designed it. And that seems pretty cut and dry, right? That makes sense. It seems like common sense. And yet, the luxury fashion houses keep winning these cases. So what does that mean for us as consumers? Do these rulings in favor of the luxury houses, who can afford all these fancy lawyers, essentially criminalize us altering our own things that we own and selling them? Well, if you go on places like Etsy or many social media websites, you will find a lot of people, individuals and small businesses, who are selling things that they have upcycled from other brands. But the brands don't like this because people are profiting from things that the brand originally created, and they don't want us to profit off it. They want all the money. So they're getting around the first sale doctrine by focusing on trademark infringement. They're claiming that by using, for example, the Louis Vuitton logo on an upcycled piece, a customer could confuse the upcycled piece as actually having been something that Louis Vuitton made. And if that upcycled piece is of poor quality or bad design, the fashion houses claim that that could damage the reputation of the fashion house. And as the fashion law article states, it could affect their ability to maintain robust trademark rights and keep the goodwill associated with those marks. as well as their corresponding pricing power. Now, among other things, I am an artist, and in art, and in music, and in fashion, we pull inspiration from places all the time. And one of the things I was taught a long time ago about copyright law and incorporating other people's work into my own is that in order to do so, you have to alter their work a certain percentage. Now, how to measure that percentage is pretty subjective, but it has to be reasonably different from the original work. And that's why I'm on the side of that guy on YouTube who makes his own wallets in different designs from Louis Vuitton, branded with his logo, but that use upcycled Louis Vuitton canvas. Because to me, in this artistic definition of copyright law and altering the piece, that fits. He's taking something and altering it to create something entirely new, something his own. Whereas those other companies aren't altering anything, they're just cutting out the logo and slapping it on a product. And in those two cases, products that they didn't even create, as far as I could tell. But Louis Vuitton, not surprisingly, disagrees with the idea of taking something and altering it into something new. For the reasons I just mentioned, that they claim people will think that that's an actual Louis Vuitton product, and Louis Vuitton never made anything like that. So if they have a problem with that, well, maybe you should take the original upcycled Louis Vuitton canvas and turn it into something that's a design that Louis Vuitton did do. Then they wouldn't have a problem with it, right? Well, wrong, of course, because then they'd probably call it a fake. The ultimate point being, they don't want you to do anything that you're going to put up for sale that has their logo on it, including upcycling things that you own. So I can see both sides of this. It's a bit of a conundrum. On one hand, I agree 100% with the first sale doctrine. When you buy something, you own it, you should be able to do absolutely anything you want with it. On the other hand, I think some places are choosing to do things that are a little shady under the name upcycling that isn't really upcycling, at least by my definition. So I can see how that's problematic and how gaining sales off someone else's logo and their hard work over decades in the cases of these fashion houses is also problematic, perhaps unethical, and could be illegal. Now in my own business, with my planner pages, for example, which I keep in these authentic Louis Vuitton agendas made by Louis Vuitton, I have considered on some of my planner pages including some little drawings. It would make sense in the My Handbag Collection organizer to have little drawings of handbags. But I would want to put popular handbags that you guys would want, like the Speedy or the Chanel Classic Flap. Or maybe make stickers with images of those bags, images that I've drawn myself, or dashboards, front and back covers that have some of that imagery. And some of you have even asked me to do this. But I have made a very conscious decision not to, exactly because I want to avoid any of these copyright issues. I certainly don't want a Louis Vuitton investigator showing up at my home. That said, if you go to a place like Etsy and you search for Vuitton, you are going to find a lot of products not made by Louis Vuitton that are either upcycled or use Louis Vuitton logos or imagery in some way. And these tend to be really big sellers for these individuals and small businesses. Why? Because people are familiar with those luxury brands. People want a piece of them. And these are ways that you can get a little piece of them without paying those enormous luxury prices. By the way, just so you know, in case you're a seller, it is against Etsy's policy to use someone else's logo, unless you're an authorized seller with that brand. So I would not suggest doing that because you could get in all kinds of trouble. Let's say you start a business and your biggest selling pieces are those that use other people's logos and imagery, and then those brands discover you, or in the case of Etsy, they discover you. They can shut your business down, and all of a sudden you've gone from something successful to zero. So what I would suggest, and what I have been trying to do, is to come up with something that's adjacent to these things that we're interested in this case, luxury handbags. So for me, I created the My Handbag Collection organizer, all these pages where you can record and document all things handbags and other kinds of collections. So I don't use any logos or imagery or anything that's copyrighted, but it still relates to these handbags that we love. Alyssa from the Gal's Guide did the same thing with her handbag heels, which I think are brilliant, by the way. I will have them linked below if you're not sure what I'm talking about. Dress Up Your Purse does this with their handbag accessories and replacement straps. I'll have them linked below too with the discount code for you. And places like Cinnamon do custom organizers for your handbags. I'll also link them below. So I think if you're going to have a business, however small it may be, even if you think that these brands will never find you, it's much smarter to do something adjacent to the products you're talking about rather than using other people's logos. Now that said, As a consumer, I am still sometimes willing to buy things that have unauthorized logos on them because as a consumer, there's no risk to me. The business takes all the risk. And sometimes you still want a piece of that luxury without having to pay the luxury prices. For example, a few years ago, a few of you might remember that I showed these two pieces of jewelry. I bought these from a company that said that these are upcycled pieces. So this Chanel logo and this Gucci logo that were turned into necklaces. So in this case, upcycled jewelry. There are companies that will take buttons off Chanel jackets and turn those into earrings. One such company called Shiver and Duke was sued by Chanel, and Chanel won for the very reasons we're talking about, the trademark infringement, even though they were upcycled. But of course, another issue you run into here, as a consumer, if you're looking at an upcycled piece, how can you guarantee that the pieces you're looking at are actually upcycled and not fakes that are being called upcycled? And as a business, if you're doing upcycled pieces to sell them, if the brand was to get in touch with you, how would you prove to them that the pieces that you're using are authentic and not fakes? The guy I talked about at the beginning of the video, the leather company, who made the wallets with his branding on them, he said that he started keeping the scraps of the Louis Vuitton pieces he was using that had the serial numbers, and he would keep the extra pieces like the handles, the vachetta parts, as proof. But frankly, once the bag is cut up, how do you prove that this piece of material that you've cut to a different shape came from the authentic scraps that you have in a baggie somewhere? You can't really. Now, I did tell you there was one other case that was really interesting where the defendant won, and that was Louis Vuitton against a company called My Other Bag. What they do is they take a plain cotton tote bag and they print images of very well-known handbags like the Speedy, the Chanel Classic Flap, the Hermes Birkin. They print those on the front of the bag, and on the back it says My Other Bag. Like, my other bag is a Birkin, or my other bag is a Louis Vuitton Speedy. One of the smart things they do is they don't use logos. They actually change the LV logo to MOB for my other bag. But it's still very obvious that the images they're using, which they created, do represent these luxury handbags. So of course they were sued, in this case by Louis Vuitton, and ultimately they won. And that was because their products were deemed parody. So basically kind of a silly reference to the luxury bags, and certainly not trying to be those luxury bags, or trying to fool anyone into thinking they are the luxury bags, or products that were made by the luxury houses. So good for them. I will have their website linked below as well. And lastly, I would note that if you as a consumer are interested in purchasing some upcycled items that use pieces from these brands and that you know 100% are authentic, some of these brands have finally... Hey, can you guys stop that? Cedar! Some of these brands have gotten smart and finally started upcrafting their own pieces. Coach, for example, you guys know this already. They have a whole section on their website that's all about handbags that they have upcrafted. Loewe has also done this, but those are a lot harder to find. Again, I think the initial lawsuits, when you hold them up against the first sale doctrine, sound absurd. But then when you start to look into it, like many things, there's a lot more nuance to it. So what do you think? Let me know in the description box below. What's okay? What's not okay? Would you buy any of the upcycled pieces? Do you think anyone would mistake any of these upcycled pieces for pieces that were made by the brands? Do you think any of the upcycled pieces would do irreparable harm to any of these giant luxury brands? I would love to hear your thoughts. Thank you so much for watching. Hope to see you next time, and I hope you have a fantastic day. Bye.